New York City, a place where dreams are born, tested, and sometimes broken. The lights never sleep, the streets never rest, and every soul that walks here carries a story. For Emily Carter, a 23-year-old girl from a small town in Ohio, the city was more than just a destination. It was her beginning. She arrived with 2 suitcases, a sketchbook filled with fashion designs, and a dream burning inside her heart. But dreams, she would soon learn, were heavy to carry in a city that didn't wait for anyone. Her days were long and her nights longer. She worked part-time at a tiny clothing store on 7th Avenue, earning just enough to pay rent for her small apartment. Every night, she'd sit by the window, sketching under the yellow streetlight glow, watching taxis rush through puddles, wondering if anyone like her had ever made it big here. And then, one stormy afternoon, fate decided to turn her story upside down. The sky grew darker than usual, and thunder rolled across Manhattan like the sound of a restless heart. Emily, running late for a fashion interview, clutched her precious portfolio, the one she'd spent months perfecting, as rain started pouring heavily. The wind howled, flipping her umbrella inside out, and within minutes, her papers were soaked, her sketches ruined. She ran across the street, her heels slipping, her breath trembling. Desperate for shelter, she pushed open the door of a small café on the corner of Lexington Avenue. Its glowing sign read, "Brew and Soul." Inside, warm golden lights reflected off the glass, and the smell of roasted coffee wrapped around her like a blanket. Behind the counter stood a young man, about her age, wiping cups with a quiet rhythm. His name was Ryan Adams, a 26-year-old barista with kind brown eyes and a gentle calm that didn't belong in a city like this. He was putting himself through college, working double shifts, and yet he carried a softness that made people feel safe. When Emily burst in, dripping water all over the floor, he smiled slightly and said, "You look like you just survived the apocalypse." She laughed, embarrassed and shivering. "Something like that," she replied, wringing out her hair. Without asking, he handed her a towel and said, "Sit down. Let me get you something warm." Minutes later, a steaming cup of caramel latte sat before her on the house. She sipped slowly, her fingers thawing, her heart calming. Hours passed as she tried to dry her ruined designs, and when she finally stood to leave, Ryan said softly, "Come back tomorrow. The coffee tastes better when you're not crying." That night, for the first time in months, Emily smiled before sleeping. The next morning she returned, and the morning after that. It became a rhythm, a quiet friendship forming between the girl who dreamed of dresses and the boy who made the best lattes in town. Emily would sit by the window, sketching, while Ryan made her favorite drink with a heart drawn in foam. They talked about everything: her passion for design, his dream to finish college, their struggles, fears, and little victories. He told her how his mother raised him alone, and she told him how her father once told her, "Dreams don't pay rent." Somewhere between laughter and silence, between spilled coffee and shared smiles, something pure began to grow, something neither of them expected: love. One evening, Emily confessed her fear. "What if I never make it? What if I'm just not good enough?" Ryan looked at her and said, "Emily, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to keep going. The world always makes room for people who refuse to give up." That became her mantra. A few weeks later, Emily got an interview call from Silverline Studios, one of New York's biggest fashion companies. It was everything she had worked for. But the night before the interview, fear gripped her again. She went to Brew and Soul, her safe place. Ryan noticed her nervous hands and quietly slipped her a folded receipt. On it, he had written, "You don't need luck, Emily. You already have what everyone's chasing: fire. The next morning, with those words echoing in her mind, she walked into Silverline Studios and nailed the interview. She was hired on the spot. That day, she didn't just get a job, she found her purpose. Her career took off slowly, but every step forward felt like a victory shared with Ryan. He was there through every late night, every failed sketch, every small success. He brought her dinner when she worked overtime, listened to her rant about clients, and reminded her that her heart mattered more than her reputation. 1 year later, Emily's designs were chosen for New York Fashion Week. The night of the show, she stood backstage trembling. Before the final walk, she whispered into the mic, "This collection is for the person who believed in me when no one else did." Ryan, sitting in the front row, felt tears fall down his cheek. After the show, the world knew her name, but Ryan was still her world. They moved in together, a tiny apartment above a bakery in Brooklyn. Life wasn't fancy, but it was full of laughter, late-night cooking, and dreams shared over candlelight. When Emily launched her own brand 2 years later, she named it RYM Designs. Ryan asked, "Why RYM?" She smiled, "Because it stands for Ryan plus Emily, the dream we built together." The brand exploded. Within a few years, RYM Designs became one of America's top luxury fashion names. Interviews, red carpets, magazine covers, Emily was everywhere. But with success came storms she wasn't ready for. Fame demanded her time, attention, and presence. She started missing dinners, skipping weekends, and living through her phone. Ryan supported her, but inside, he felt her slipping away. One evening at a high-profile New York gala, Ryan waited at home with a dinner he had cooked himself. Hours passed. No call, no message. When Emily finally returned near midnight, exhausted, he asked quietly, "Do you remember the last time we had dinner without you checking your phone?" She sighed. "Ryan, this is what we worked for." He looked at her and said, "No, Emily, we worked for us, not for this." Those words hung in the air, heavy and painful. They drifted apart over the next few weeks, the silence between them louder than any argument. Then one morning, Emily woke up alone and realized she was surrounded by everything she wanted, except the one person she needed. She walked into Bruinsoul, the cafe where it all began. It hadn't changed. Same soft jazz, same golden light, same smell of roasted beans. She ordered a caramel latte and waited. Ryan walked in an hour later, surprised to see her. She stood, her eyes wet, and said, "I forgot what made my life beautiful. It wasn't the fame, Ryan. It was you. You're my design, my dream, my forever." He looked at her, smiled faintly, and said, "Then let's start again. No deadlines, no cameras, just us." They did. Months later, they got married in Central Park, a small, intimate ceremony under cherry blossom trees. Emily wore a simple gown she designed herself, and Ryan wore a navy blue suit. They didn't need anything grand, just promises, peace, and the sound of their hearts keeping time together. The world watched them as their love story became a symbol of balance between success and soul. RYM Designs continued to grow, but Emily and Ryan never let ambition outgrow love again. They traveled across America, opened small design schools for struggling artists, and continued to live with simplicity. Years later, on a Miami beach at sunset, Ryan held Emily's hand and whispered, "From a coffee shop to an empire, we made it." She smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. And it all started with one stormy afternoon and a cup of caramel latte. They sat quietly, watching the waves roll in, their fingers interlocked, their story complete. Proof that sometimes love doesn't find you in the perfect moment. It finds you in the mess, in the rain, and in the places where your heart finally feels seen.